Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of Ask Mike with Tara Talmadge along with Mike Irwin himself. I hope everyone had a very Merry Christmas, and this is a special edition of Ask Mike because we're all jazzed up here.
Well, I am. You just look
I'm
normal.
always in this.
I'm usually wearing some of my pig trail clothes, but on Sundays I wear a coat and tie.
Yep.
It's the one thing I have to do that I don't particularly
very
like to do, but
today,
it's okay.
Well,
and because we're taping this on Sunday, because a lot of you are going to the bowl game, even though I will be back here because I want to be back here because I've been to every bowl game there is, and it doesn't do much for me. I just rather watch it on TV, but I will be back here. So we're having to tape Ask Mike a day early.
Yeah, and so let's just get right to it. Our first question this week comes from AUSTIN.HOGFAN, who says, our defense should be able to keep them, Penn State, to 3 to 4 scores. The big question remains, can we overcome Burks not playing? How do you think we will approach this?
Well, first of all, and I'm going to explain this in answer to another question later on, I think they're going to run the ball a lot more in this game. And that's one big way they'll counter the loss of Burks.
Probably.
But when it comes to throwing the ball, based on what we've seen in these bowl practices, which is not the whole thing, but the early part, and I've seen some where they're throwing the ball, you're going to see, I think, KJ Jefferson target a lot of different receivers.
Yeah.
You know, he's used to looking for one guy primarily, although he has thrown it to a lot of other guys. But now we're seeing it be spread around. But I still think what happens here is that Warren Thompson takes Traylon Burks' place as kind of the go-to guy. And I think it's logical because he is the one that that sort of mimics Traylon Burks physically.
Yeah.
He's 6'4", he's fast. He's not as physical as he is, but he's got a lot of those attributes. And he really got better as the season went along. Also, I think Warren Thompson is the guy likely to be the go-to guy when the season starts. So this bowl game is kind of a dress rehearsal for, I think, the role he'll have next year. They've got a lot of young, they've got one transfer portal guy out of Oklahoma, very exciting receiver. They've got a couple of really good high school receivers coming in, so they'll be fine at wide receiver. But especially early in the season, you need experience. And they are losing most of their experienced receivers for next year. I think early in the season, Warren Thompson's going to get a lot of looks. So this will be a game in which he kind of dress rehearsals himself for that role. And he also has a previous relationship with Kendall Briles at Florida State. So I just think it's logical to assume when they throw it, they're going to look at him more. But you got other guys involved. You got Davion Warren, you got Tyson Morris, Jacalyn Crawford, Ketron Jackson, and I also think the tight ends will be involved more. And Arkansas now has 3 instead of 2.
Yeah.
You know, so I think you throw all of that into the mix, they'll be fine throwing the ball. But again, think about KJ Jefferson. He had stopped running the ball a lot at the end of the year. Why? Because he was all beat up.
Right.
And they didn't want him to suddenly be out. So they dialed back running the ball a lot. Well, he's healed up in the last several weeks.
Should be ready to go.
And he's good physically. And if he gets bumped up in this game, he's got a whole off season to heal back up. So I think you're going to see him cut loose and run more. So the long story short, I think a big part of Traylon Burks missing this game is going to be made up by the running game.
Yeah.
And I'll give a further answer to that later on, why I think that.
Okay, well, let's just keep on rolling then. Lake City Hog has our next question for you, Mike, and asks, could you give us any kind of an update on the status of Arkansas in recruiting the portal? I am sure that we are looking for at least one linebacker and at least one defensive lineman. You hearing any good news? Okay, as always, when I get a recruiting question, I defer to Otis Kirk. He's our recruiting guru, and a lot of what I'm about to say, you can watch if you watch our Pig Trail show on Sundays. We have a Otis Kirk recruiting report in which he's talking about a lot of this stuff. But I did talk to him specifically about this question, and here's what he said. So you're kind of on target. He said they hope to get one D-back out of the portal, one linebacker, and one pass rusher. And he said that could either be a defensive end or a down lineman if he's a particularly good pass rusher. Now, at one point, they were looking at possibly a left tackle. And that may have been why Jalen St. John announced he was in the portal. Yeah.
This is a second-year player that was very talented and highly recruited out of high school, apparently got frustrated and didn't feel like he was going to have enough playing time next year, so he hit the portal. Sam Pittman immediately stepped in and talked him out of it, so he's withdrawn from the portal. And Otis thinks that that probably means they don't have plans to bring in a left tackle out of the portal. And then the other question was at quarterback, and this was because of Cade Renfro, who the Ole Miss transfer, who was a walk-on, but had looked really good in these bowl workouts. And they felt really good about having him in there as a fourth quarterback in case you get injuries. And he tore his ACL in a practice, so he's out probably for next spring too. So there was some talk that they might bring in another quarterback, which they don't want to do because they want to bring in a quarterback in 2020 in the 2023 class. And if you sign one in the 2022 class, that might scare some of those guys off.
Absolutely.
So what they ended up doing, according to Otis, there's a quarterback who's been offered a scholarship at a Power 5 school, but has agreed to walk on at Arkansas. So he's apparently a pretty talented guy, someone very similar to Cade Renfro.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll, you know, maybe that's the answer here because he doesn't think they'll bring in a quarterback either.
Yeah, because I mean, when Pittman was asked about the quarterback situation, he said if we get to 6 available scholarships, we might look at it. Yeah. But it's not for sure.
But again, we'll go back. 1 D-back, 1 linebacker, and 1 pass rusher. That's what he thinks they're going to try to bring in, and he feels pretty good that they're going to get what they want.
Okay. Well, our next one, referring to Army's win over Missouri, which I think you were very happy about, Mike, in the Armed Forces Bowl. Razor's Edge 56 says, I would bet that Dan Mullen, wherever he is, if watching, cheered loudly after pulling the knife out of his back he got from that two-faced, hairy high school frat boy dork. Wow. Okay, and Robert Wilson says, I actually stood and cheered.
Yeah, that was, we didn't have a graphic on that, but that was another comment about that. And look, there was a big discussion on Twitter about all this.
Yeah.
And I kind of had a hand in that because I admitted that I was watching that game, and here's a backstory on that. Marty Houston called me. Yeah. He works for us, and Marty and I are good friends, but he called me to give me grief about that. He said, you're watching that stupid game? And I said, look, I watch a lot of games in which there's one team I really want to lose. Yeah. Doesn't have much to do with who I want to win. It has to do with who I want to lose.
Exactly.
And that one was because of that dork, as they call him.
The
Eli.
Two-faced, hairy high school frat boy dork.
I mean, there was names like Dinkiewicz, Drinko Dorkowitz, all kinds of names. Now, why do Razorback fans react so negatively to this guy? Some of it has to do with that thing we've talked about all along, which was the SEC basically telling Arkansas when A&M came into the league, look, you have to consider Missouri as your big rival now, not A&M. And Razorback fans are like, what are you talking about? And they're still angry about that. And they don't like Missouri, and he's their coach. So some of it was that. But then you also have Barry Odom, who was fired at Missouri. And here comes Drinkwitz in there, and he made some remarks. About Arkansas. One question he got asked at SEC Media Days last summer was about this rivalry. Was there a rivalry developing? And he said, well, there's not much of a rivalry because we beat them all the time. So until they start beating us, how can it be a rivalry? And Sam Pittman made a reference after that game to there are things that we can't talk about with regard to Barry Odom, and all the fans thought he was talking about maybe Odom leaving or something like that. I think there's some pretty good indication that what he was talking about was Odom being mad about these comments and the players wanting to back their guy up. The point is Arkansas won, they backed it up. If Drinkwitz wants to pop off about a rivalry, well, he's 1-1. Yeah. So that's, that's split even so far. So again, I think that was why a lot of fans were wanting to Army. Now, this brought on a lot of other questions about, are you as a Razorback fan obligated to always pull for an SEC team? What do you think about that?
No.
I would say no. I've never felt that way.
Have you ever felt like you needed to cheer for Ole Miss?
Look, I've talked about the fact that I grew up west of Lubbock, and I was a Texas Tech fan. They were 60 miles away, and I went to a lot of their games. Okay, I had a next-door neighbor his dad went to Baylor, and he was a Baylor guy, so I liked him. Okay. My favorite cousin lived in Fort Worth and was a TCU Mighty Mite. That was a little peewee team that was associated with TCU. I don't think you could do that these days, but they did back then. And he liked TCU, so I liked TCU. Okay. And there were some schools I was kind of neutral about. The two schools I didn't like, Texas A&M, because I had an uncle that was an Aggie, and I didn't like him, so I didn't like A&M. And I never liked the University of Texas because the way their fans would come into Lubbock and pop off about how terrible it was to be out in West Texas. So, you know, I learned early on, I don't have to root for a Southwest Conference team in a bowl game just because Texas Tech is in that conference. I feel the same way about Arkansas and the SEC. There are plenty of SEC teams I will root against.
I completely agree.
Ole Miss all the time. A&M all the time. LSU all the time. I'm kind of neutral about the others.
Yeah.
I will tell you, and this will make Alyssa mad, even though I kind of backtrack on this when I'm around her. But I really secretly kind of pull for Florida when they play Florida State. I don't have anything against Florida. I mean, they're okay.
Yeah.
They're not one of the schools I don't like the stadium in Columbia, Missouri. It's out in like a weird industrial area by the railroad tracks. And it's just yuck. I've never liked games there. I don't really have anything against South Carolina. Tennessee's okay. Yeah. You know, Missouri, no, I don't like Missouri. They're weird. They got their football stadium in a ravine. They built the parking lot to the Bedia parking lot to their basketball arena in that ravine. Yeah. It's a strange place with, I mean, they've got perfectly flat ground. Why would you not build on the flat ground and make your people walk down into the stadium and walk back up out? And then how about their students who have a tradition of sitting on those big white rocks during games? What's that all about? Let's talk about dumb traditions. Yeah. I don't like schools with dumb traditions. And that's a dumb one, right?
Well, I didn't know that they actually sat on them. I know they sit.
No, they sit on the rocks.
I know they sit in that area.
No,
and then
I've seen them on the rocks.
Right? Okay.
It's like, I don't know, they're trying to show that they're dedicated. I'll sit on a rock to watch this team. I don't know. Anyway. So, again, you don't necessarily have to pull for an SEC team in a bowl game.
No.
I would pull for some of them.
Yeah.
Others, I would say, yeah, beat them.
Depends on the situation, for sure.
I was definitely for Florida in this bowl game, and they got beat. So,
well, I accidentally skipped a question, so we're going to go back to this one. Sorry about that. Stephen Welch doesn't really like Arkansas's depth chart for the Outback Bowl. He says, should we be showing Bumper Pool, some love and start him if they want him to stay? Second in the SEC in tackles and does not start.
Well, I think Bumper Pool understands there's 3 linebackers that have been rotated all year long. I don't think they have permanent starters there. No. Here's my guess. Sam Pittman knew, Barry Odom knew that, you know, the other 2, Grant Morgan and Hayden Henry, this is their last game for sure. Right. So, you know, you reward them by starting them. I don't think Bumper Pool cares. No. He's got 120 tackles. Grant Morgan has 94, Hayden Henry has 96, so he's got plenty of playing time, plenty of reps. Will he come back or not? Well, what causes a lot of people to have concern is he's accepted an invitation to this NFL All-Star game at the end of the year, and if he plays in that game, he can't come back. Right. But accepting an invitation doesn't rule you out. Doesn't mean so he's still going to have to sit down. Yep. With Sam Pittman at the end of the year after this bowl game, probably sometime a little over a week from now, and then he'll decide if he comes out or not. And Sam Pittman has said he's going to make a pitch to try to bring him back. He should. He should. Bumper Pool, they need Bumper Pool. He'd be their lead linebacker, and then they've got some good choices to back him up or to be at the other linebacker position and even some backups. But I don't think playing time in whether or not he starts in this bowl game has anything to do with it.
And you know how much he and his family just love the University of Arkansas.
There's no indication he's mad about this, this situation.
No. And I wouldn't be surprised if he came back either. All right, Mousetown has our next question for you, Mike. Without Trey Williams, how can Arkansas get any pressure on the quarterback? Fair question.
Okay.
He was the leading pass rusher.
If you just look at who the replacement is for Trey Williams, you'd say you got a problem. Because we're going to take a look at this, at the statistics, because the replacement is sophomore Jashad Stewart based on the depth chart that they put out. But as we look at these statistics, Williams has 28 tackles, Stewart has just 7. I think we got a graphic for that if we can get that up. Williams has 28 tackles, Stewart has just 7. Williams has 15 thrown for lost plays, Stewart has none. Williams has 6 sacks, Stewart has none, and Williams has 6 quarterback hurries, 1 for Stewart. Now look, Williams has clearly gotten most of the reps. Okay, so that accounts for the difference in those statistics. But
Of
you do
course.
have a tremendous difference in experience in those two guys. Because Trey Williams was a fifth-year senior.
Yep.
Stewart is a sophomore. And so, yeah, you're going to lose something there.
Absolutely.
With him, with Williams not being in the game. So what's the answer? Well, according to Sam Pittman, you're going to bring in a lot of other guys into play that are going to get playing time that they hadn't been. Now, what I'm confused about this is you got Zach Williams at the other position.
Yeah.
That's the jack-in position on the other side. So I'm not sure if he's going to involve him more in the pass rush there or if they're going to move him over or what they're going to do, but he's going to play a lot more. And then he named off 2 or 3 other guys that are going to get into the rotation more. Here's what I think they're also going to do. Barry Odom, toward the end of the year, was blitzing a lot more than he traditionally has. Remember, Hog fans going nuts because they just do that 3-man pass rush and they didn't like it. Well, he was blitzing a lot and they had some success. Penn State is primarily a passing football team. Their passing numbers are way beyond their rushing numbers. So they're going to throw the football a lot.
Yeah.
So if you're playing a team that's going to throw it more, it just seems like to me you're going to blitz more.
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to be part of the answer to how they deal with this. But the bottom line on any of these guys that are missing, Traylon Burks or whoever it is, we're just going to have to wait and see how it works out. But I do think they have a good plan.
Yeah, and the good thing is they've had weeks to work on that plan as well. It's not like they're just turning right around and jumping into it. So,
Right.
And they have talented guys. I think that there's plenty of talent there to fill those voids a little bit. We've got some basketball questions, though, for you, Mike.
Oh, goody.
So let's talk about it. Let's see. Razorback Redneck is wondering about that players-only meeting before the Elon game. He says, good that the team got back in the win column, but if you need a players-only meeting to beat a 3-9 basketball team, you got a problem. I saw some of this stuff on social media as well.
Yeah,
it just kind of seems
I think they were reading this
unnecessary.
wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think, and let's talk about how this meeting got called. Well, Devo Davis called it. He texted all these guys. He called it. But Eric Musselman admitted in the discussion after the Elon game where this came up, he admitted it was his idea.
Yeah.
He wanted him to do it. Okay. How many times have you heard about a players only meeting? It happens all the time in all sports, football, basketball, baseball, whatever, women's sports. They're always doing this. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. But I think a lot of the fans were skeptical about this because you hear it all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, let me give you my take on this because, after that game, we had Kamani Johnson and Trey Wade in the press conference room. And those are 2 guys that haven't played a lot, and they were key factors in this game. And they were the 2 guys that revealed this players-only meeting, got a lot of questions about it. What they said, and I'm paraphrasing here, was that you have a lot of new guys on this team. And maybe some of them felt left out, but hadn't said anything about it. Maybe they felt like when they got on the court, they weren't getting a lot of help from the other players out there.
Maybe.
So when I get out there, I need to get more assists directed at me. And I think a lot of the guys listened to that, but then they also said to those players, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But you need to adapt to your role. And that's been the issue, I think, all along, is all of these guys were stars on their previous team. Now they're having to accept a subservient role where you're more of a team player.
Yeah.
So what was the end result of this? Well, I think you can see some of the results of this. I think you saw players playing smarter basketball. Now, when this game started, the Elon game, it started off just like the previous 2 losses. Bad defense. I mean, those guys were shooting threes early, and they actually had the lead for 5, 6, 7 minutes early on. And they were getting some uncontested backdoor layups. And I'm thinking, here we go again. Now, I was actually on the floor for that game. I went out and shot it, which I almost never shoot games these days. But there was nobody else available. It was just Nick and I in the studio. All you guys were off.
You got to see it up close and personal.
I did. I was right under the basket. And I saw early on how bad it looked. And I thought, here we go again. These guys were 3-9. Come on. Those other 2 teams that beat Arkansas were pretty good. This team wasn't good at all. And they're looking good. But then I think it was the second time out. They came out of that, hit a 3, kind of got themselves going a little bit, and then I saw the defense change.
Yeah.
I saw them contesting 3-point shots. Elon started missing 3-point shots. I saw them going inside and getting their shots blocked. The defense was more active.
Yeah.
You didn't let some guy go in back door and he's got an uncontested. You're right there. If he gets inside with the ball, you're going to swat it away.
Trey Wade was a big part of that.
That was.
Yeah.
And so some of it was who they were playing, but some of it, I just saw the energy level go up.
It's good.
Here's the problem you have, though, when you start saying, okay, they had this players-only meeting, and look how much better they played. Who's the opponent?
Yeah.
It's Elon. It's not Oklahoma.
No.
It's not even Hofstra. So maybe it doesn't mean what we think it means.
No.
And here's the bottom line. You're not going to know until they play Mississippi State.
Yep.
First SEC game on Wednesday night. Go on the road. Mississippi State is, I think they're 9-3 on the season, 7-1 at home. But that one loss was to Minnesota. But Minnesota's pretty good. I think they're 10-1 right now. So this is probably a mid-level SEC team. You go there and you get beat, it's probably not going to be a good way to start SEC play. But if they go and win that game, then you can say this players-only meeting had some results. But I hesitate to say that they've turned the corner.
Right, and I completely agree. At the same time, I think the misunderstanding for especially this question in particular is that meeting wasn't for Elon. It was for Arkansas and for those guys to get their act together. So I don't know if it's turning the corner, but it's definitely going in the right direction.
Well, it just looked better. The energy level was better. And look, I think the significance again was that early in that game, they looked bad. Arkansas looked bad.
Yeah.
And then I saw them turn it around, and they did it, honestly, with more energy.
Yeah.
They just looked like they were more active. I don't know if Musselman, after that second timeout, jumped on them or what, but everything changed after that timeout.
We'll see what that lineup looks like for that Mississippi State game. That's going to be an interesting one as well for Arkansas. All right, Lanny wants to know, does Arkansas's basketball struggles have anything to do with Musselman's injury? Probably not, but they did start to have problems right after he was hurt when Trey Wade fell on his shoulder in practice.
Okay, I'm going to take a guess because there's no way to prove this, but I don't think that the struggles they've had recently have anything to do with Musselman's injury. Yep. They are 3-2 since he got hurt, so they won some games. I think the real question here is, what happens if he ends up having to have surgery and misses a few games, especially SEC games? That may not be good. Now, he's indicated that while they've done an MRI and they say you've got a rotator cuff issue and it's going to have to be corrected with surgery, but he said, I'm going to wait till the end of the season if I can hold out. But he's also said he's in a lot of pain right now.
Sure.
So then there's another issue. Is this affecting him in practice? I don't think it affects him much in games, but you got to be very active in practice. Yeah. Does he stand away from the players? Because he's usually right out in the middle of them, which is how this injury happened in the first place. So does he back away from them? Is he less active? That could, if he continues to practice, go through practices with this injury, that could have an effect. But the other part of this is, if he does end up having surgery and, let's say, he misses some practices and misses a couple of games, what will that do, especially in SEC play? So this is something worth watching or keeping an eye on.
I don't see him missing a game, though.
Maybe not.
I could see him missing a practice or something because of it, but his wife, Danielle Musselman, posted a picture of him coaching on the sideline after leg surgery or something.
He had a broken leg.
He had his foot propped up with his crutches.
He was still coaching with a broken leg.
Yeah.
Now, I did have a fan come up to me and say, well, it didn't, if he has this shoulder injury, it sure didn't show when he got thrown out of that Oklahoma game because he was going nuts. But I went back and looked at that.
Did?
Yes, I did. And you know what you see? He's going crazy with his right arm, going nuts. That left arm is hanging down. He's not moving it at all.
December 2nd is when this happened.
Yes.
It's been almost a full month.
And we haven't noticed, have we? Nobody's noticed that left arm is doing virtually nothing.
I guarantee
He's doing everything with his right arm.
We'll be paying a little more attention to it now, that's for sure. All right, Blaine QUARLES has this comment about a new $180 million basketball arena being built by the city of Waco for Baylor. A 7,500 seat arena. LOL. That's normal for a midweek game at Baum Stadium. That's just throwing away money for Baylor, but okay then.
You know, this is interesting. it's interesting that Hog fans would comment on this, but it did bring about an interesting discussion on Twitter. First of all, it's part of a trend, and a lot of them seem to know that. And this is a trend by athletic directors. You know what they're doing?
Yep.
They're downsizing their arenas, but they're charging more money. Texas is about to do this. They've got the 7th or 8th largest arena on campus in college basketball, 16,500 seat Irwin Center, no relation, it's spelled differently with an E.
I was going to say, it's not your family?
No, not my family. We don't have that kind of money. But that's been a huge, it was maybe the largest at the time that it was opened. It's been open for 20-something years. They're going to get rid of that thing and go back down to a 10, 12,000 seat arena. They're downsizing. Ole Miss didn't downsize. They went up a little bit, but they didn't go up as much as they could. Theirs is 9,500 seats. But here are a couple of the comments that were made about that on Twitter. First of all, those arenas can be actually more intimate and better than bigger arenas. Well, if the bigger arenas aren't full, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But you can't tell me, because I've been to Ole Miss's, the pavilion at Ole Miss, I've been to 2 or 3 games there. And it's still not Bud Walton Arena when it's close to full. It's not even close. So there's that, but you have to consider that this is the new trend.
Yeah.
And this is being built. The other interesting thing about this, and I didn't know this, some of these fans know more than we do. And it may be people that live in the Waco area, but they said this is one of the reasons Kim Mulkey left Baylor, was because she wanted this arena to be built on campus.
Yeah.
And she wanted it to be named after her. And they went, no way.
Well,
The city's doing it, they're paying for it. Now look, I don't blame Baylor. If the city's going to do it and you don't have to pay for it, why would you?
exactly.
What I don't understand is why they're agreeing. They've got a 9,000 seat arena now, and they're going to go to one that's 7,500. And here's the other problem I have with this. When you lower the capacity, and you raise the prices, you cut people out.
A lot.
You cut the kind of people that are out. Your average sports fan that's not loaded with money suddenly can't go to the games anymore.
I know.
So I don't like that trend, and I hope it doesn't happen here.
I just can't see them taking out. I know that that's been a discussion,
Well,
taking seats out of Bud Walton.
Well,
I would be
read the next question.
so disappointed. Okay, we'll get to it. All right, a dramatic rise in construction costs has Tim Hyde concerned. He asks, isn't U of A spending $100 million in renovations? Oh, gosh. In renovations to Bud Walton Arena. What are they doing with that massive of an investment? Is there a link somewhere?
Okay, now.
You're going to tell me that they're taking seats out? Kidding.
Okay, now this came up as a result of this previous discussion.
Right.
And I had made a comment somewhere in there of the great value that Bud Walton Arena was, because Frank built that arena for $35 million.
It's just incredible.
This new Baylor thing is that's 6 times more expensive for basically 1/3 the seating.
Right.
That shows you how much construction costs have gone up. So now this guy is responding because he's worried that with all these construction costs, where are they going to get all the money, and what's it going to cost just to renovate Bud Walton? Now here's what I know about this. First of all, no dollar amounts have been discussed. The last time I can find any discussion about this publicly was when Hunter Yurachek went before the board back in September, I think, and he announced that they were doing a survey to determine how much interest there was in luxury seating. Now, this is where you get into the issue of reduced seating, because there's only one place to put luxury seating where it is now, and that's to go into the upper deck and take those upper deck seats out, or some of them, whatever. He said they were working on an architect's plan, and I haven't seen any evidence of that yet. But here's what I would say about that. Right now, Bud Walton Arena is the 8th largest basketball arena in the country and the 4th largest on campus. If you went in there and eliminated that upper deck, you would be down below teams like A&M. You'd drop down to like 30th.
I just hate it.
And you give up so much. I'm not sure Hunter Yurachek, I don't think they've had a 19,500 seat crowd since Musselman got here.
No.
The way it used to be in the old days, some of those Kentucky games, and certainly when Nolan was here. When you fill that thing totally up, and I'm not talking about an announced sellout, I'm talking about every seat is actually full.
Yeah.
That goes to another level, and I don't want to see that go away.
No.
But here's the problem. I like Yurachek. He's a good AD, much better than Jeff
great.
Long. But guess what? Jeff Long has a lot of his people still there. And these people are typical AD underlings that do what all these trends are, which is I talked about before. Oh, the trend is to have smaller and have more money and charge more money. And so you're making more money. But what are you doing in effect? You're giving up atmosphere that helps you win a game. Look,
I don't like it.
There are things they could do to Bud Walton. Now, first of all, Frank got it right. I was there. I went to some of the architect meetings when that thing was being built. They brought me in to, you've been into that press conference room, right?
Which one?
At Bud Walton.
Yep.
You've been into the media workroom.
Yep.
You know who designed that?
You.
I did. They gave me a blank space and said, how would you fill this? How would you do this?
It's great.
Instead of those normal risers that we see where you put that shake, I said, make them concrete.
Yep.
And so when you get up on that riser to shoot your post-game video, it's not
shake
shaking.
at all.
And I've got steps. You don't have to step way up to get there. There were steps in there. And then I made the media workroom / eating room bigger. So you have plenty of room to go in there and work.
It is very nice.
So I was around when they were doing this. Frank paid so much attention to detail.
Yeah.
And he went to all these arenas all over the country, and he picked out what he liked, and he added that, and he picked out what he didn't like, and he left that stuff out. So he built a pretty good arena. Now, it was still built very inexpensively.
Yeah.
One problem I've always seen with that arena is the concourse. It's too small, too narrow. And it's all brick around the edges. So there was a plan years ago when Jeff Long was here and he brought in some architects. They were going to glass that wall, take the brick out on that concourse where right now you look outside and there's brick all around it. They're going to make all that glass. So if you're walking around on the concourse, you look out and you see outside. And it makes it more expansive. Plus, they were going to bring it outward and make more room and build concession stands where you could access the concession stand from either side, which serves twice as many people in a crunch. Then they were going to make the entrances bigger. Now, why is that important? Especially when a game is over with a full crowd, like 19,000 or whatever, they all start evacuating that arena. Those entrances and exits are too small.
They are.
Frank cut corners when he did that. So they could come in and expand that, expand the concourse. If they do all those things, I'm all for that.
I think, well, Yurachek did mention that part of the renovation would definitely be to that main concourse.
And that's important.
I don't know what those renovations look like.
Just leave the seating alone.
Leave the seating alone. I think we can all agree on that. We're going to go back to...
But I think I'm going to lose that argument.
You think you are?
I do.
I hope not. All right, let's go back to football, though. Tim Goff wants to know, has Penn State lost players to the draft or transfer portal also?
Okay, there's two players. This gets really convoluted.
It's so interesting.
We were discussing this earlier.
I don't like it, but we'll keep talking. Yeah.
When you start dealing with other teams, you realize how different Arkansas is. All of us, especially somebody that's been around as long as I have, we complain about the restrictions that we have now that we didn't have in the old days, but it's still so much better here than it is in other places. Okay, here's what we know for sure about Penn State. Two linebackers, Brandon Smith, Ellis Brooks, they're out. They've opted out. That's 181 tackles for that football team. Yeah. This is why I say I think Arkansas is going to run it more.
Yeah.
Their two top linebackers, their two top tacklers aren't there. It's a no-brainer that you run at those guys.
Absolutely.
At their replacements. So that's good. And if it stays like that, then you've got a trade-off. Arkansas loses a D end and a wide receiver, and they lose two linebackers.
Yeah.
But then there are all these rumors. They've got two projected first-round draft choices in the defensive line that some say are not going to play in this bowl game. You throw that into the mix, and that's huge. And then their top wide receiver, who also may be a first-round pick, he's had over 1,000 yards in receptions and buku touchdowns. There's rumors that he won't play. But here's the thing, you can't get a straight answer from them.
Nope.
If you go and look at their press conferences, their media has asked this question over and over and over again.
Jahan Dotson, by the way, look him up. He's really good.
Yeah, and all you get is just a no answer.
Yep, and they're doing it on purpose because they don't want Arkansas to know if he's going to play or not. And Penn State, by the way, is already in.
They're already there
Tampa.
as of Sunday.
We still can't find an answer.
And they're supposed to work out is it tomorrow and Monday?
Tomorrow.
They're supposed to work out, but that workout is not available to the media. Now, the one Tuesday is.
Yep.
Even to the Arkansas media. So I'm going to guess that come Tuesday, if we haven't had an announcement about these other players, that they're definitely playing, you're going to see Arkansas's media out there look with their numbers, looking to see if they're out there. And then we'll probably know exactly who's going to play and who's not going to play.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about Arkansas. We don't go through that nonsense. We know who's opted out, and we know who hasn't opted out. And I promise you that before they leave, or before they were due to leave, what, Sunday? Which is today?
Yeah. Yes, Arkansas leaves today.
Tonight, right?
Yes.
Okay, I promise you that if anybody was opted out before that we didn't know about, they would have already said it.
I agree.
So we know where they stand.
Yep.
I think anybody that doesn't play from here on out would have to be a COVID thing.
Probably.
I think that's the only other way.
Or an injury or something.
So, yeah, an injury. So I'm so glad that we get to cover a team where they don't cover this stuff up.
Yeah.
Because the fans get to know about it.
Yeah, and again, we're leaving for Tampa tomorrow, and so we will figure it out once we're there. Because as of right now, we haven't been able to
I'll be on the
get an
phone with
answer.
you. Now, what about that guy?
Yep, we're going to look for him. We're going to find him. All right, ARMON ABBE, a little bit worried.
Yep.
He asks, with all the COVID stuff ramping up again, are we going to end up with another bowl game canceled? That would be 2 in 2 years, and that is just nuts. Gosh, I hope not.
This all started with the Gator Bowl and A&M announcing they didn't have enough to play, so they opted out. They said, we can't play the game. Now, this happened early enough that they found a replacement. I think it's Rutgers is going to fill in for Texas A&M, so Wake Forest still gets to play in that bowl game. But here's the problem I have with what they did. If you remember, all the way back before football started, what were we told? That the SEC this year had a totally different approach to COVID than in the 2020 season. There was going to be no contact tracing and no mass testing. Here's what they announced. If you start showing symptoms, go to your assistant coach, tell him you have these symptoms, he will get you tested. And if you test positive, they will withhold you for a week or till you test positive again, or negative again. So that was the protocol. There would be no mass testing of everyone else. As long as you're not showing symptoms, they're not testing you. And I think we got through the season because of that without major disruptions. But now here's A&M doing that. They had several players test positive, so they just tested everybody. And then they went, whoops, we don't have enough.
Their AD, Ross Bjork, came out and said that they shouldn't be testing non-symptomatic people.
But
so he was frustrated by it too.
Well, who decided that?
I don't know who decides it, but clearly he was frustrated by the entire situation.
So that made them not have enough and go beyond. Now, look, the more cynical Razorback fans have gotten on social media, and most of them are on Facebook that I read. These guys are talking among their friends on Facebook. And what a lot of them are saying, come on, A&M didn't want to play in this bowl. They think they're too good for the Gator Bowl. They were mad because Arkansas ended up in a bigger bowl game than they did, even though Arkansas beat them. And they thought, you know, keep in mind that A&M still believed toward the end of the season they were going to go to the SEC championship game because they'd beaten Alabama, and then it didn't happen. And so now they go all the way down to the lowly Gator Bowl, which wasn't good enough for them. It's not a New Year's Day bowl.
Right.
So we don't want to play in this thing, so we're going to get sick and have COVID and all that. Now, look, I am not saying that's what happened. I don't know what happened. But this is what a lot of Hog fans were discussing. Now, we have these 3 other games that have actually been canceled. There's the Hawaii Bowl, the Fenway Bowl, and the Military Bowl. And all of these were actually canceled because of COVID. Now, I don't know what the protocol here was. In the stories I read about it, didn't say whether they did mass testing or not.
I have no idea.
Here's what I do know, because I saw this on Twitter. And this is an NFL thing, but the chief medical officer for the NFL said that there is 0 evidence in their data that shows that players who are asymptomatic are causing a spread of COVID. That the spread, as nearly as they can tell, is coming from people that actually show symptoms. So if he's right about this, there should be no reason why you shouldn't play in a bowl game if you're not sick. You know, you're not likely to spread it. Could you technically, possibly? But here's the other problem that's in the mix here. It's the Omicron variant. And now that's spreading everywhere. And this is why you may yet see some real cancellations, even up to and including the National Championship Series and maybe the championship game, because the Omicron is spreading like wildfire. And I mean, the media reports is like scary. It's a lot of the media is calling this a viral blizzard. It's like all around us. But when you look at what's being said about Omicron, it's not making people sick nearly the way the other two did, the original COVID-19 or the Delta variant. So you're less likely to get sick. So what do we do here? Do we start testing everybody? And if I mean, what if it spreads and 75% of the people on a football team have it and they say you can't play, then you don't play these games. And I don't know what's going to happen. What's really scary to me is you can then move forward with this and affect college basketball.
Yeah.
Because as Omicron continues to spread, the projections are, I've read 2 or 3 stories on this, some of the medical people are saying this could be affecting 60, 75% of the population before it's over because of the way this stuff spreads. And what I read was there's some technical things about Omicron, the variant, that allows it to be transmitted when it's in your nose and your mouth. But when it goes into your lungs, which is what would make you sick, it doesn't do as well as the other two. And that's why you see fewer people getting sick with this. So far, I've seen maybe 1 report of a death. There was somebody in Houston that died from Omicron. So as long as the numbers stay low, maybe there'll be some sensibility about this and you won't do the mass testing. The only way you get tested is if you have symptoms. But this could end up not just disrupting the bowl picture as we continue, because every day there's more of these things that are canceled. And I think it all boils down to whether or not you're going to do mass testing on your team because some guys show symptoms and test positive, or whether or not you're only going to test people that show symptoms and test positive.
Well, the good thing is Arkansas has handled it exceptionally well.
They've stuck to the protocol.
Over the past several, I guess it's been 2 years now, which is wild. So hopefully that doesn't happen to Arkansas and they can continue to play their game.
The problem
and Penn
is
State doesn't get sick either.
You can't control the opponent.
Exactly. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's a week of too. So if anything happened with Penn State, the game would just be canceled.
You've got some people, some Hog fans on Facebook discussing this among themselves who have already bought tickets, already got hotel reservations.
Yeah.
And they're trying to figure out what's going to happen if they can't get their money back. And a lot of them are saying, I'm just going to go to Florida anyway for a vacation.
Might as well. It's good weather there, apparently.
Yeah.
All right, we've got one more question for you, Mike. It's reacting to a tweet by Miami quarterback Derek King indicating that Kendall Briles is considering joining the Hurricanes staff. HOGVILLE wants to know, could he be leaving for Miami?
This has been a rumor for a while. I mean, it's been talked about before on social media. And I can connect some dots here.
Okay.
Remember when we go back to the hiring of Jimmy Sexton for Sam Pittman's agent?
Yep.
Remember what he first said when he was asked about that? He said, it's not just about my new contract, it's about new contracts for my assistant coaches.
Absolutely.
I want to make sure they all got paid. Then Hunter Yurachek came back, and in an interview with the Arkansas Democrat, he referred to that. He said, I don't want to lose assistant coaches because of what we're paying them. Now, if they're just out for a big paycheck and that's all they want, then maybe.
Yeah.
But he said, if somebody genuinely wants to stay here, I don't want to see them leave simply because we're underpaying them. So he seems to be sensitive to this issue. And then Sam Pittman came back most recently in a press conference and said, look, I want to keep my staff intact. Now, why did he say that? Well, first of all, the first year that he coached, even though they had good results, he lost half of his staff. 5 guys were gone. 2 of them left on their own, but the other 3 he fired.
Right.
Well, he had to replace 5 assistant coaches, and by all accounts, he's really happy with the guys he has now. They're all recruiting well. They all can coach, which is a rarity. A guy that can recruit and coach. So he wants to keep these guys. And I think this was another reason why he got a new agent.
Yeah.
I think a big part of what's going to happen when he sits down, when Hunter Yurachek sits down with Jimmy Sexton is, what are we going to do about our assistant coaches?
At a certain point, though, you're going to lose some guys. I mean,
you are. But do you want to lose Kendall Briles? Now, look,
I don't think so. I know that some people have a different opinion, and they give him a really hard time. But
what do you think Briles' attitude? Do you think he's unaware? Maybe he's got his nose to the grindstone that he pays no attention to social media. But you got about half Arkansas fans criticizing him some for his play calling.
Yeah. No, I know.
And I've always said on this show, you got to balance whatever issues you have with play calling with the single most important thing that happened with this team this year, which was the development of K.J. Jefferson at quarterback. You don't have that development, you don't have this 8-4 season. You just don't.
Yep.
So he was hugely important to the success that this team had. Do you want to lose him and possibly not have a guy that can develop quarterbacks the way he did? Jefferson is developed. What if he develops even more next year and becomes a Heisman candidate?
Yeah.
What if you end up giving that up?
That would be pretty cool.
And what about whoever else has to step in after that? Do you get that same quarterback development? And think about developing some of the backups like Coley.
Yeah.
You know?
That would be exciting.
So, again, do you want to keep Kendall Briles? I would say yes.
I would say yes.
Just for his ability to develop quarterbacks, and you just put up for his little idiosyncrasies at play calling. We know what they are. I mean, he likes trick plays that don't work, and he spends the first quarter kind of probing the edges, see if that works, and wastes a little bit of time on it, and then he starts going up the middle, vertical passes, vertical runs, and things work better. But who cares if you win the game?
Exactly.
It just drives you nuts in the first quarter.
A little bit, but it's okay. we can work with it. All right.
That's right.
Mike, are you going to be okay without us when we go to Tampa?
Yeah, I'm going to be in this big studio all by myself.
I know.
I've got a new little dog, a little puppy. I just may bring him in here and let him run all over the place because you guys won't be here. Oh, he's potty trained already, so it'll be fine.
There we go. All right. By the way, follow us on social media for all the coverage from Tampa. It's going to be a good time. We'll be showing you everything that's going on between Arkansas and Penn State. Best coverage for sure. What?
And you have shown me all this technical garbage.
Yes, I'm trying
to.
You
guys send video back. I got to do all these little steps to take it from here to there to there to over there to back to this computer.
You're going to do great.
And if I don't do it right, then we're going to be in real trouble. So I have to learn
If anything, we can wing it. We'll be good.
I'm not a computer guy. So you know that.
Well, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this week's edition of Ask Mike. We'll see you back here next week.